This is an audiovisual record of the Reckonaissance report filed by Expeditionary Officer Force on February 25th, 2022. This report is in regards to Lost Ark and details key elements our officers are trained to evaluate. Lost Ark is a game with stunning visuals, which is good because you need to have a stunned status effect to really enjoy the rest of the game. That or be charmed by a group of friends playing along. Weak game design and weaker story design leave it as nothing more than another mediocre MMO that will, more than likely, fall out of favor quickly, while hooking a few paying whales that keep filling its pockets. The full report follows. Visually, the game is incredibly beautiful. Skills are incredibly diverse and visually pleasing to utilize, and the monsters to use them on are equally diverse and interesting. Characters and environments vary, and even minor background characters and environments are surprisingly unique. Unfortunately, that's about the only thing that's above middling in this game. The audio isn't wild, there's no standout bits of music or design that I heard in my, admittedly only 10 hours of play.
Well, looks like we got some competition. You ain't going nowhere. Get 'em, boys!
It meshes well, which many will like, but it doesn't really enhance the game. The overall gameplay is fairly mediocre, at least and especially early. While visually pleasing and somewhat cathartic, combat is pretty mindless, and no classes tend to stand out or really actually fill into the role they're supposed to. This is not wholly remedied by reaching the late or end game either, as friends who have reached that noted similar problems. The UE is, as with the combat, pretty but awkward and in some cases confusing. Some great examples are how there's no party screen easily accessible, while join party is readily available, even when you're already in a party. Even earlier, a great example is the intro, where you pick your class. You're forced through testing the class, which I actually appreciate in the end, but as there's no confirmed class before that, it can be mildly confusing even to an experienced player. Overall, this is very clearly an MMO before it's an ARPG, with the ARPG part basically feeling like an addition instead of a core pillar of the design. Couple this with feeling like you're thrown in halfway through the game through various things, such as immediately gaining your advanced class, starting item levels being 50, and even squishy support classes being able to rip and tear like Doom Guy's long-lost fraternal twin. Overall, it just feels meh. There are some interesting elements and concepts here, such as the rapport system and the adventurer's journal, which are all basically just achievement hunts and collectible gatherings, which feels depressingly more core to the game than the actual ARPG and combat are. The story falls flat hard, especially early on. Each character class is given its own introduction story, which sounds like a high schooler's first D&D character. My guy is a powerful sorcerer who is to be bound to her eldritch bloodline through an ancestral spirit. However, that spirit was stolen away on the eve of the ritual. But, despite not having this spirit, I single-handedly defeated the demon army that stole them, and were ransacking the capital city of my great eldritch brethren, and regained my spirit butt plug, which lets me hold in and channel my powers. Joking aside, these introductions actually are all really disappointing to me personally, due to the fact that they would make incredible prologues. Fighting against a demon incursion with your basic baby magics to reclaim a powerful ancestral spirit and awaken your true power, or sneaking through a horrifying experimentation facility, utilizing all the tricks you can to bring them down and prove your worthiness of an officer's rank, etc. But no, they're handwave as you being a badass, and you're thrown into a very basic prologue, delving into a ruin after a long voyage where you were never told, found out, or knew why you were even on the voyage in the first place. You know anything about it? Gurkha filled me in on the whole deal. The hidden treasure beneath the ancient city of Trua. See if you haven't heard from Gurkha. Allow me to fill you in on the details. How did I get here without being told what I'm coming here for? Anyways, story and character writing, for that matter, are pretty one-note and simple. The prologue twist can be spotted miles off, especially if you have even a hint of writing know-how, and don't overthink it. The overarching story feels very bland. As always, it's the side stories that stand out in these scenarios, though that's less due to them being well written and more to just how bland the core story is. Supposedly this does get better as you get further in the game, but that's really just not an excuse for me. Though, I guess it is for MMOs in general. A few important notes. There are often thinly veiled references to other older games, which can be really fun. However, some feel less so references to me and more like straight rips from those games, from a literal Elder Scroll to less obvious things such as the entire Plague story arc feeling almost straight out of the old Warcraft 3 Human and Undead campaign. On top of that, the game very clearly uses some new standardized bait and hook techniques to give the player a taste of the microtransactions available in the game in order to later pull those away and encourage and entice players to start paying for those sweet, sweet goodies themselves. They're very common and very much predatory tactics that are, well, just standard fare, especially in these kinds of games nowadays. But as long as you recognize them, you won't literally buy into it. Final evaluation. Casual group players, medium value. Visual players, low value. Others, avoid. Overall, Lost Ark is a middling MMO with an ARPG flair to it. It's free to play, and combining that with the MMO means it requires a large time investment in order to get to interesting content, likely 20 plus hours, and unless you're one of the 10% who know exactly how to optimize leveling and progression to reach that content quicker. The visual design is stellar, but that really doesn't make up for, in my opinion, a bare thread story and barely more put together actual game design. If you have friends who play it and the time to dedicate to a new trend, it might be worth throwing in to hang out, which is why for casual group players, it's a medium value game. Because of its interesting graphics, visuals, and unique designs, visual players who like to play games just for the look of things and less so for the actual gameplay, I'd recommend maybe giving it a little bit of a try. It's low value. I wouldn't recommend sticking to it for too long as it's not that interesting, but you'll see some interesting stuff even early on. For everyone else, I wouldn't recommend playing this, except as popcorn mindless play, and even then, I'd recommend RuneScape for that over this. The gameplay might not be as action-packed, but hey, at least it's got some actual thought put into it. End report. And if you don't dance, then you're no friends of mine.